Yay. Hey, Mama, thanks for coming. I'm Joe.
Hi, Joe.
So, my intention for today is to share some things about the USA's birth chart, and also to look at what's happening now. Okay, so things are getting stirred up pretty strongly, as we know. So, and to see what the astrology is of the USA's birth chart, see about what the prognosis might be. Come on in. Okay. Before I do, let me just when we get to that part about what's happening now, it's going to touch on political situation. What I don't want to happen is a political argument. Okay, so I want to try to stay as objective as possible in this. I don't want to get anyone riled up. And I know there's strong feelings about just my personal viewpoint, which I'll try to keep out. I'm a liberal Democrat, but I'm not going to interpret what's happening, I say, through that lens, hopefully, okay? But I'm just being honest, I have my own views, all right? So, in other words, what's happening now, some people, based on their values, may say, oh, this is awful, and other people, based on their values, may say, it's great, okay? So, I will try to be as objective as possible.
I'm already feeling upset, Joe.
But no political, we're not going to get, And then the other thing is, just to do with, every time you start something new, you can do a birth chart for that, right? So your individual birth chart, hopefully when you took your first breath, as close as possible, and that's true for your whole life, right? But you can do a birth chart for anything, like when you start a new business, the time you open the doors. If you choose an opening doors, then you do a birth chart for that moment. That will say something about the success or not success of that business. That will be in effect for the entire length of your business. Okay, whether it's 2 years or 50 years. There's the birth chart. Same thing for a wedding. Okay, as soon as people say I do a chart for that moment. Okay, and it'll give you information about the nature of the marriage. So likewise, you can do, and that's what we're going to look at here, the birth chart for a nation. The further back you go in time, it gets a little more difficult because it's good to have an accurate birth time. All right. So, like we have a really good one for Ukraine, the modern Ukraine, and it's 1992, I think it was. And the timing, 5 o'clock, right? But I was just talking to Bob, who has studied the USA chart. That there's no total agreement about what is the real USA birth chart. There's different astrologers believe different things. Like Bob likes to use one for July 4th, 2 in the morning, I think it is, right? But the one that's most astrologers go by, the one I'm going to use today, is later in the afternoon, July 4th, 1776, Philadelphia. Thomas Jefferson was interviewed or wrote somewhere that the delegates signed the Declaration late in the afternoon. That's what he said. So that late in the afternoon could be between 4 and 6 p.m. There's a new degree, every 4 minutes there's a new degree of rising sign. So, but the one that's called the Sibley chart is I'm using is 5:15 p.m. That seems to, I like that chart, and that's what.
You use 5:40.
5:40?
Then use
no, I'm using 5:15, which gives 13 degrees of Sagittarius.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So there's no guarantee this is 100% accurate, but and there's different opinions, but and I like this chart. It seems to fit for describing the United States. Okay. And the other thing that to keep in mind is, like if you're just doing a chart for an individual, you can describe certain personality traits or characteristics or etc. But then for a whole nation, if you're going to describe traits for a whole nation, nothing applies to everybody. But you could say, maybe make some generalizations about countries. The British are more reserved as a people. But it doesn't mean every single Brit is reserved. There might be some very, emotionally over-the-top Brits, right? There might be one or two in England. I was married to one. Italians are very, but I'm sure there's lots of reserved Italians. So, but you can make general statements. Okay, so about the traits of the nation. Okay, I want to try to do that today. All right. Any questions so far? And also, yeah, I want to try to make this as practical as possible and not overwhelm you with a lot of astrological data. Okay. There's a short video I want to show, which is interesting. The main thing that I feel, and a lot of astrologers feel, is that we, the country, U.S., has a really powerful birth chart. Okay, and I want to show you why. And there's a long tradition of this. Mayor Baba has affirmed it, that there's a special spiritual destiny that this country has. He said it would be the new humanity, right? It would happen here first and then spread. But according to certain spiritual teachers, that's not a new idea. It's been around. I don't know if anyone ever hear of The Secret Destiny of America by Manly P. Hall. Yeah. He goes into detail that this, going way back thousands of years, the ancient Greeks, the Egyptians, the mystery societies, and cults, in addition to training the individuals, they had this vision that they knew there was America existed, there was a continent. They knew that. And that this vision that there would be a place where the highest ideals, moral, ethical values, and spiritual values could be built into the society and the government was going to happen someday. Okay? And to get away from kings and subjects, etc. The foundations of democracy based on spiritual principles. And then that accelerated when the Americas were discovered. The Rosicrucians, the Freemasons carried that ancient tradition forward. And they actually, Francis Bacon, who was a contemporary of Shakespeare, was a Freemason. They sent people here, according to Manly P. Hall, to colonists to America in the 1600s and 1700s to lay the seed for this, to get it going. And they would have secret meetings in taverns and people's homes, and they held this vision. And they were behind, the breaking free of England was not universal. Okay, it was actually maybe, I don't know what the percentage was, but not everybody wanted to.
A third.
A third, yeah. So a minority were in favor of breaking free of England. The loyalists, particularly in the business classes that were doing quite well, they didn't want to break from England. A lot of them wanted to, we can work out a deal here. Let's not separate. We can, But according to Manly P. Hall, it was the Freemasons who pushed it and made it happen. Okay? It's The Secret Destiny of America. And then he gives the history of this going way back thousands of years. But then there's some really good anecdotes in here about how the U.S. seems to have some kind of divine protection in maintaining our democracy and our core values of the country. And the anecdotes are really fascinating. And there's one event I'm going to show in a video that is not in this book, which is totally astounding. So that's the other thing I want to show that. And that really confirms what Baba says, that U.S. has a special spiritual destiny and therefore needs to be protected. Okay? And that there will be crisis, and apparently we're in one, but that we will survive it as a nation. Any questions? Someone raise their hand.
No, I just want to mention that book is available online.
Yeah.
If you punch it in and go free PDF afterwards.
Oh, really?
You can get a free PDF.
Oh, great. Good. Good. I got it from Amazon. Yeah. Manly P. Hall was a spiritual teacher, mystic. He died in 1990, based in L.A. What's it called? The Psycho something Research Society is still going. 150 books, and his main one is this secret. I forget the name right now. It's maybe 5 times. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, the main thing is, I heard Phyllis Frederick say that she asked Baba about him, and he said Manly P. Hall was on the 5th planet. So that gives credibility to it. Yeah. Right. All right. So. I'm going to explain, I've got this Word document, and we'll look at the chart, and I'll explain, as we go. Whoops. Get out of there. There you go. Let's give a bigger historical context. The significance of the discovery of the outer 3 planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The evolution of the world, of technology, was really slow for centuries and centuries and centuries. The plow, right? There was some progress, but slow. Okay, hardly anything moved technologically, and even spiritually. It was, it was centuries and centuries would go by. Change was at a molasses pace. And what we know about the modern world is the rate of change. It's speeded up, and we say that's Baba's work. He speeds up. But these planets were discovered, two of them, Uranus and Neptune, right before Baba took birth, and then Pluto after, when he was in the body. And so astrologers would say this rate of change of evolution, the speeding up, you can account for the discovery of these three outer planets accounts for that. And they're called the gods of change. Okay? They're transpersonal. Right? And in a way, they correspond to knowledge, power, bliss, the three main aspects of Uranus is considered knowledge, but the higher octave of Mercury, which is our rational intellect. But Uranus is also known as the awakener, okay? And Bob is the awakener. So it's the higher mind, intuition, all right?
It's interesting.
Yes?
Uranus is exactly to the minute of our conjunct Baba's midheaven.
Yes, that's right.
So,
yeah. Well, on the discovery, you mean when it was discovered, or what?
no, Baba's.
Oh, in his chart. Yeah,
His chart.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, good. Thanks for bringing that. Baba's the awakener, and the midheaven is in astrology is how your career, your life purpose, and your living. And so the midheaven is an important point in how you interact and you bring your skills into the world. And there's Uranus is conjunct Baba's midheaven. Baba's the awakener. Right. And so many people have spiritual awakening when Uranus is going over their sun. I came to Baba when Uranus was going back and forth over my natal sun in Libra. Okay? And I could feel it coming for a couple of years. All right, but the interesting thing is Uranus is really strong in the USA chart because it was discovered, let me scroll down a little bit. It was discovered the 13th of March, 1781. Herschel was and that's the same year that the Battle of Yorktown occurred, which was the last official battle of the British Army where they lost. That was it. The Revolutionary War was over with the help of the French. And then the first Constitution of the United States of America, the Articles of Confederation, they were modified in 1789. But the first ones were ratified on March 4th, just 12 days before Uranus was discovered. So our U.S. birthing as a nation corresponded with the discovery of Uranus. So it's really important in our chart and everything that Uranus means, all right? And then the other thing to keep in mind, this is important, when a planet's discovered, it means that archetype is ready to come into mass consciousness. It's been there all along for billions of years, but only certain few people can consciously, before it's discovered, can access it, all right? Probably advanced beings. When that's discovered, it means it's time for everyone to have conscious access to that energy. And Uranus is the awakener. Uranus is scientific breakthroughs. It happens quickly. It breaks us into new forms of consciousness. And it has a lot to do with freedom, independence. It inspired the American Revolution, inspired the French Revolution. And here are some of the meanings that astrologers give to it. It's the individuation process where you start to become your own person. And you're not just bound unconsciously by conventional ideas, okay, and conventional religious beliefs. It rules the sign of Aquarius. The individual, the importance of the individual is Uranian influence. Before it was just, serfs, 90% of the population are serfs, and any one individual is not important. Uranus has a lot to do with technology and inventions, electricity, starting around Ben Franklin and the battery, etc., came in with Uranus. Okay, lightning bolts, that's Uranus. Zeus, or throwing the lightning bolt down, that's Uranus. And it's also sudden breaks. Okay, individually, when we break from our past, maybe you're stuck in a bad relationship for 10 years or 20 years, and then you have a Uranus transit, and then you said, screw this, I'm not doing this anymore. Okay, that Uranus gives that the impulse and the courage to just cut what's not working and move forward. Okay, and so this energy is really core to our country. Non-linear thinking, and also global. Uranus has anything, particularly in the modern world, anything that's global. So people who have a strong Uranus influence in their birth chart can often get well known. Our current president has a Sun-Uranus conjunction. All right, so for good or bad, whether you like him or don't, everybody in the world knows about him. Okay, so there's that potential to be well known if Uranus is strong in the chart. Okay? And so that's certainly true of the United States, right? Of course. All right. So then, in 1846, Neptune was discovered. Okay? And Neptune, and this was getting ready for Baba's incarnation, because now Neptune has opened up spiritual realms. Okay? It rules the sign of Pisces. It opened up our inner access to the spirit and in new ways. It opened doors inside. All right. So there's Neptune has different, like all the planets, Neptune has different range of expression. At the highest range, it's our connection to the divine. It's our desire to merge with God. That's the ultimate expression. Okay, and anything the yearning to and it doesn't. Neptune feels uncomfortable in the world. You know, it's like I want to break. We're ready to leave. You know, it's like the dissolution of the ego would be a Neptunian quality. Right, and in the middle range of Neptune, you would have the arts. All right, music particularly, dance, painting. It's the imagination. The creative imagination is Neptunian. So when Neptune was discovered, that energy was coming in. Romanticism, romantic poets in the 1830s, 40s, hypnotism, all right? Photography, anything to do with film, the film industry, the camera, it's all images, all right, are Neptunian. So the camera gets discovered, and then the film industry develops. All that would be a positive expression of Neptune in a middle range. And then the lowest vibe of Neptune is various forms of escapism. I can't handle the world, and drugs, any form of addiction. Okay, I can't handle the world, but I just want to just get high or whatever. Okay, or sit in front of and binge watch TV or whatever. Like, okay. So. Neptune is important in the USA chart, and we'll get to this later. What Baba said is America has lots of energy, but it's misdirected. Right? That's one of the key things. He put his finger right on a key thing in the USA chart when he said that, and I'll show you. It has to do with Neptune. Okay, misdirected energy. And then Pluto. I didn't put the date here, but Pluto was 1931. Was the
1930.
30. Okay, and it's recently been demoted from a planet, which is ridiculous. How can you do that? Neptune is small, but it's like the nuclear bomb. Nuclear bombs, the atomic bomb is small, but the power, because it's breaking the atom apart and releasing the energy, that's Pluto. Okay, so psychologically it's about diving deep into the unconscious and this is Baba's work, dredging up the unconscious, the shadow side, facing it, pain, crisis, death, feels like a death, and then coming out the other end, that's Pluto. So it rules the sign of Scorpio. In the outer world, it has a lot to do with power, okay? And the use and abuse of power. And then Pluto's also strong in the USA chart, which we'll see. It rules big business, corporations, wealth, the desire for wealth, greed. At the lowest vibe, it's greed. Okay, and it can be physical abuse and sexual abuse, the lower expressions of it. But the highest expression is infinite power, the power to make things happen, the power to bring about change, the energy behind that. Okay, so the discovery of these three planets is significant for the whole human race in terms of our evolution got speeded up. The rate of change speeded up, starting with the discovery of Uranus. And those two were preparing the ground for Baba. Interesting, when Neptune got discovered, then there was the interest in Eastern religions started around the same time. Emerson and what's his name? The other writer.
Thoreau,
had an interest in Eastern religions.
the transcendental.
Transcendental, right. Vivekananda comes to the United States in what, the 1880s?
1883.
Yeah, 18.
The World Conference. The World Conference.
The World Conference. He brings Eastern, and he made a big impression. Sufism starts coming into the United States. This all coincided soon after the discovery of Neptune, laying the groundwork for Baba's incarnation. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at with that kind of general intro. Let's take a look at the USA chart. And I'm going to flip back and forth between the Word document and here. This is it. Using, I can't make it any bigger. I wish I could. So if you want to move forward a little or sit here, I don't know. That's okay with me. All right. So
this is all Greek to me. I don't know astrology.
okay, yeah. So have I said anything that's Greek to you yet?
No.
No. So feel free to ask questions. If it's like, it doesn't make sense, stop me. All right, come on. I got it. That's the job of an astrologer when you're doing chart. You got to translate these symbols into everyday language that makes sense. Bob.
What about not planets, but small bodies beyond Pluto?
Well, yeah, there's more of those being discovered, and that's a whole other subject. Okay.
That's what?
That's a whole other subject. Those.
Nobody says
impact.
they have any influence on it?
No, they do, but I'm not going to cover that today. It would just add too much information. Okay.
Could you go over some of the main points?
I'm going to do that. That's what I'm heading towards. Yeah, I should have a pointer. There you go. Here's one.
How do you like that?
So, the United States is a Cancer. July 4th is Cancer, right? So, every July 4th, the sun is at 13 degrees of Cancer every year this day. And you can see that's where it is, 13 degrees of Cancer. But what's interesting and unique about the U.S., there's all these planets in Cancer that were there on July 4th, 1776. There was, this is Venus, Jupiter, the Sun, Mercury. This is the part of fortune I'll explain, and this is another point that's important, the vertex. All in Cancer. So the U.S. is a super Cancer country, okay? So let's think about what that means. So when you've got to be able, for doing a nation's, as I said before, chart explanation, you have to translate what differently than what you would do with an individual, okay? So the sun for an individual is your core sense of self, okay? It's your deep creative and spiritual energy. And it's where you're heading into the future. You're becoming your sun sign, okay? You're growing into it through the course of your life. It's like your life myth, right? For a country, for the U.S., Cancer is a core energy and archetype that defines our nation. Okay? And so, what are some qualities of Cancer that people may know? Okay, just throw them out.
Mothering,
Mothering.
nurturing, cautious.
Cautious. Cautious, okay.
Emotional.
Mothering, emotional.
Moody.
Attached.
Moody, yeah. Protective.
Also self-indulgent.
Self-indulgent.
Ooh.
Maybe. Yeah, possibly. Okay.
Very about home
Home.
and
yes.
land.
Home and land. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Caring.
Pardon?
Caring.
Caring. Mothering. Yeah.
Children.
Children. Family. Right. All these are, would you say, are qualities we see in America as primary energies, primary motivations?
Moving
Not
toward
the-
it.
not the-
The homeland. Right. This
That
is
part
our.
we're still needing to come
And the
into.
other thing is patriotism.
And sentimental.
Sentimental. That's yes. Sentimental. Yeah. Moody. Sentimental. But patriotism is a Cancerian quality. I've traveled. Many of you have traveled around the world. I've lived in different countries. I've never seen a country that has more interest in weight in flags than the United States. Right? The French love their country. The British love their country. But you don't, in those countries, you don't see like car dealerships with these massive, or businesses, or people. It's just not what they do. But all these super amount of planets in Cancer generates a huge amount of patriotism, which is good. The downside is jingoism, right? This my country, right or wrong, or clannishness.
Yeah.
If you're not part of our family, and this is played into later our attitude about immigrants too. It's like if you're not part of the kind of family, maybe Caucasian, you're not Caucasian, you're not from Northern Europe, you're not a WASP, then we don't feel comfortable with you. Okay, that's one of the indications of our. Well, America's always had an ambivalent attitude about immigrants, going
But
back
we
to the
were
beginning.
immigrants.
But,
Yeah.
except the British immigrants. England's okay, then English, but the further south the immigrants came from, the more they were rejected. And Ireland, of course, they didn't like that. So there was this ambivalent attitude.
And
We
Jews.
welcome you, the Statue of Liberty, we embrace you, the cancer qualities, and then at the same time, we don't want you here. You're stealing our jobs, you're rapists, you're criminals, and so it's both. This is from the very beginning, and it continues to happen to this day. An ambivalent attitude about immigrants, and part of that comes from this huge cancer dimension.
But I want to add,
Yes.
I don't see it as nurturing or caring or mothering. We did it on killing the Native Americans
Yeah.
and
Okay.
on the backs of slaveries where those people weren't even treated as human beings. So I object to this idea that we're so nurturing and mothering and caring because we weren't.
Well, okay, yeah. What you said, I'm going to get there. The U.S. has a dark side.
Very
Definitely. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Hey.
All right, I'm going to start focusing on what's positive about the U.S. Okay, and we have a dark side. All right? And I want to focus on what makes this country unique, and the deeper levels of what gives us where in the chart there would be a sense of unique spiritual destiny.
I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
And just could you?
I'm not going to leave that part. I'm not going to leave the
Yeah,
shadow
I
side.
would love to hear something said about how really we evolved to this great nation that was so powerful and because we did it on the backs of other people.
Yeah.
So I'm just stating
right,
that. You don't
yeah.
have to deal with it if you
No.
don't want, but it's really there for me.
That's in the chart. I'll show that.
Okay.
Okay. But there is still, regardless of that, if you're on the inside, if you're a accepted member, there is this sense of caring, warmth, nurturing, food, love of food, restaurants. Let me share some of the qualities. Cancers love food, right? We're a foodie country. All right.
This is so
Home.
ugly.
There you go. Little house on the prairie, mother, apple pie, flags, food, cooking, restaurants, revering the past. Cancers like to hold on to the past, and it's very important. The American dream is a Cancer quality. Have a home, have your own home, your own little plot of land, your job, your nice, comfortable. That's so Cancerian. Okay? Staying close to home is, and so again, one of the reasons there's always been an issue politically between isolationism politically and having broad connection with an involvement in international affairs. And that has continued to this day. During the lead up to World War II, Roosevelt wanted to sell arms to England to help them, and the isolationists absolutely stopped them from doing that. And that's a Cancerian thing. That's our problem. Well, we just have our nice, comfortable, safe existence here in our own country, separated by two oceans. Okay. Sentimental, as Bob said, jingoism, excessive. Okay, some Cancer qualities.
There's also the nostalgia for the past.
Yeah, that's what I said. Revering the past, nostalgia, and childhood, the inner child, which has become, another reason why America has led the way in psychotherapy. But the child, worshiping the child, worshiping children, is very Cancerian also, which is partly good. All right. Where was I? But the thing that makes this United States really successful and gives us the spiritual destiny is the placement of Jupiter, I believe, in the chart. Okay, I want to explain that. You see here, Jupiter, this is Jupiter, it's like the number 4. Right?
Can you speak up a little for the camera?
Sorry, yeah. This is Jupiter, and it's at 5 degrees of Cancer, close to the Sun, very close to Venus. That is highly significant. Jupiter, let's get to know the planet Jupiter. There it is. Jupiter is very strong in our birth chart, and it's called the Greater Benefic. And it's in Roman mythology, he was Zeus. Okay, the king of the gods.
Greek mythology.
Greek mythology, king of the, in Roman mythology,
Jupiter.
Jupiter, right? He overthrew his father Saturn, the god of agriculture and time. All right, so Jupiter is associated, the archetype. Expansion, growth, wisdom, abundance, good fortune, higher learning, educational travel, philosophy, spiritual enlightenment, spiritual quests, spiritual seeking, the search for meaning and truth, wanting to understand the big picture. We see all these spiritual principles that go with it. Highest morality, ethical behavior, ethical values, honesty, but also brings good luck and fortune, opportunities. Optimism, positive outlook on life, generous spirit, and a sense of justice. Jupiter rules the judiciary system, which is important right now. So all these, Jupiter is called the Greater Benefic, and Venus is the Lesser Benefic. So in our chart, this is the placement of Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. Right there with all the other planets. It's like Jupiter's beneficent energy and vibration is spreading out over the sun, the country. All right? It's there as a protection. At the highest level, this is our spiritual destiny. This is what Baba was referring to. This is what Manly P. Hall was referring to. It's this Jupiter placement. And it's always there from the very beginning. And no matter how many crises we go through, and we've been through them, the Civil War, the Depression, etc., that we will always have this protection. In the solar system, Jupiter is the largest planet, right? And it has the largest, biggest gravitational field. And Jupiter is like a bouncer. Okay? Jupiter, any meteors that are headed for Earth, it either swallows them up into its gravitational field or it throws them out the door, and they get off. There would not be life on this planet on Earth without Jupiter. I don't know if you know that. So that is the protector. So on every level, on the physical level, on the obvious level, on the psychological, spiritual, it's the energy that gives blessing and protection. And so this country, having been started on July 4th when Jupiter was in the same sign with the Sun, Venus, Mercury, part of fortune, this is this protection that will always be there. All right? And that's good to keep in mind particularly when we get into crisis where it feels like we're losing our sense of purpose as a country. Okay, and then the other thing is Jupiter and Venus, you can see, are close together. Right here. Right? So that's significant. Those are the two beneficent planets that bring a sense of prosperity, happiness, well-being, and they're conjunct. So in an individual chart, if a person is born with that, they're usually big-hearted, loving, generous. Doesn't mean they'll go through hard times, but there's this quality. Venus is our how we give and receive love. It's the heart, and it also has to do with money. Love and money would be Venus. When you got Jupiter there, Jupiter brings prosperity and wealth. Right? So, and there it is. There's more to it, which I want to explain, that doubles the power of this Jupiter-Venus conjunction. So let's go back and look at the various. So the sun is at 13 degrees of Cancer, and 13 degrees is also an Aries degree, right? 1, 13, 25. So that means that new beginnings. Anything to do with Aries has a lot to do with new beginnings, a fresh start, and that's certainly how the founding fathers thought of this country. All right, and every degree of the zodiac has a little saying that goes with it called Sabian symbols. It's a image that capsulizes the meaning of that particular degree. All right, so the 13 degrees Sagittarius of Cancer. The Sabian symbol is a very old man facing a dark space to the northeast. All right, a very old man facing it. So here we have a new country, and yet the symbol for the sun at 13 Cancer is a very old man facing the north. So it gives a sense of there's something ancient here, right, about this country. And the northeast in Native American cultures, that direction symbolizes wisdom, healing, spiritual cleansing, and the beginning of life. There's that Aries, right? And all these planets are in the 8th house, which I'll explain, which totally fits that. I'm going to read something that Edgar Cayce wrote about this country, or in one of his readings. Edgar Cayce described a connection between ancient Egypt and the founding of the USA, suggesting that many souls who lived in Egypt, particularly during the time of the Temple of Sacrifice and Temple Beautiful, incarnated again in America to establish a new era of spiritual understanding. He portrayed the U.S. as a continuation of the spiritual and philosophical ideals first established in Egypt. There's the old man. There's that image, all right? Casey's readings frequently mention Atlantis, suggesting that many Atlantean souls migrated to Egypt and later to America, playing a key role in the development of these civilizations. Casey's readings indicated that the founding of the USA was influenced by these same spiritual principles, with many individuals who had incarnated in Egypt returning to help establish a nation based on freedom and spiritual understanding. Okay? Pretty amazing. And that's one way that's suggested. It is a very old man facing a dark space to the northeast, the Sabian symbol. In the U.S., the moon is at, the moon sign is at 27 degrees of Aquarius. There it is down here. Okay. So on July 4th, it was at 1776, so the moon was in Aquarius. And the moon in a country, in a nation, describes the collective, the people. All right? So the moon in Aquarius is those people at the time that wanted freedom, wanted independence from England, the humanitarian principles that were that Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine and Ben Franklin were tuned into, that were coming out of Europe about the rights of man. All that is an Aquarian. Okay, so the rights of the individual. So that is a fundamental our mood, our national collective has this Aquarian side to it. Okay, and it's very different than Cancer. The Aquarians don't have that clannish or that super attachment to the home. Okay, so there's a bit of a disconnect, a little bit, between Aquarius moon and the Cancer energy. All right? And then the rising, what's the Sabian symbol for that? So it's interesting. The Sabian symbol for the moon at 27 degrees of Aquarius is a tree felled and sawed. All right, and that's what we did. This country was all forest, so the people came and created a civilization. They had cut down literally on the literal level, right? It's like when you read the journals of the early pioneers, it was terrifying. These gigantic trees and forests, there was no sunlight coming through. Literally making a clearing and building some homes was like immense task. And
What they had to do at the center.
And the center, yeah.
They had to go in with
Yeah,
machetes.
yeah. People used
Clear it all out.
some of these, the women would often write the journals, and they would get really depressed. No sunlight. If they came from Europe where the trees had been felled already for centuries, to be surrounded by these, and no hardly any sunlight. So it was a major project just to clear some space. So that's interesting. That's the Sabian symbol. It has other. We can go in. I might have some psychological meaning. And then the ascendant for the U.S., the rising sign. There, right here, is 13 degrees of Sagittarius. So the rising sign for an individual is, it's an intuitive way of being. It's so instinctual, you don't even know you're doing it. It's like a fish in water. You identify with this quality that you don't even have awareness of it. With the sun sign, you know I know I'm a Libra, okay? But your rising sign, it's what you were born with, and it's like just an unconscious way of being. That is who you are, intuitively, all right? And that's why you often see the shadow side through the ascendant, because there's less, there's more blind spots associated with, I think, psychologically with these people's ascendant than with their sun sign. Like Leo, for instance. Leos are, like to be center stage. If it's the sun Leo, they can say, okay, I don't want to be center stage all the time. You talk, But Leo rising people will just like often don't have the awareness of how that they need to be center stage all the time, and it can get exhausting. So, what are some qualities of Sagittarius that you know? So this is how, as a nation, we would project ourselves and want us to be known as in the way we interact with others. Anybody familiar with the sign of Sagittarius?
Adventure love.
Yeah, adventurous.
Independent.
Independent? Yes.
Self-thinker.
Pardon?
Self-thinker.
Yeah?
Self-thinking.
Okay.
Larger than life.
Big? Yeah, because Jupiter rules the sign of Sagittarius. Jupiter is the biggest planet. Jupiter makes things larger than life.
Yeah.
Big, yeah.
Vision quester.
Vision, yeah, always adventurous, always looking over the horizon. What's the next big thing? Once something's been settled and done, I lost interest in it.
Religion.
Spirituality, yeah, spiritual quest.
But religion,
and religion, yeah.
Yeah.
Religion and spirituality.
Yeah.
Physical endurance.
Yeah, they make good athletes. Yeah.
Loyalty to friends.
Yeah, okay. Great sense of humor. Mark Twain was a Sag, right? It rolls the thighs, so athletic. Anything to do with
They're
the
usually
legs,
beautiful people.
dancing,
Beautiful.
all that. So this great friendliness. You're everybody's friend. A great sense of humor. Optimistic, because Jupiter rules the sign of Sag. There's this great sense of optimism. No matter how bad things are, it'll be okay. Always cheering up other people. That's where the sense of humor, getting people to laugh, and a benevolence, wanting to help others. All that is part of the American way. But bigger than life, then some people think the loud, blunt is also right. Americans are known for being loud. I lived in Europe for a long time in England. When I came back, why is everybody so loud in this country?
Overeating,
Overeating,
partying,
yeah.
indulging.
Over that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jupiter is overindulgent.
Doesn't Sag have that quality also of being kind of sneaky and manipulative?
No, that's Scorpio.
No, actually, no, I don't know.
Not-
Sag is a fire
not
sign.
talking about-
Sag is a fire sign. It's usually pretty direct.
Yeah.
Blunt. That's the quality. I want to go for that. They say what they think. Yeah, they'll hurt your feelings, but they'll be honest. Hey, I'm sorry.
Would you say overbearing would be a quality?
Big. Yeah, loud, like just their presence, not necessarily intentionally, but just big. Yeah, big presence. And loud. And when they come in the room, The fire sign.
It's like
Yes.
always the teacher, never the student.
Yeah, and teacher.
Like, listen to me.
Yeah, right. So there's the outer, and then it depends on the evolution of the consciousness of the person,
Yeah.
but it's also the spiritual secret.
And also philosophical.
Philosophical. Looking for meaning, asking the big question. What's this all about? What's the meaning of this? That's also Sag.
Higher education.
Higher education, and law, okay, the legal profession, okay, is important. All right, so look at the Sabian symbol for, this is really interesting. The pyramid and the Sphinx, all right? On the back of the dollar bill, I had a picture of it.
Oh, yeah.
Look at on the back of the dollar bill. It's interesting, the Sabian symbol is the pyramid and the Sphinx. And we just read what Casey said about the connection to Egypt. And there's the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. And that Sabian symbol nailed it, didn't it? And then that's why, that's one reason I think 13 Sag makes sense, right? This connection with Egypt. Thomas Paine's, and also 13 degrees is another Aries degrees, 1, 13, 25. It's the new beginning. And Thomas Paine said, we have in our power to begin the world over again. All right? On the back side of the dollar bill, beneath the pyramid, is the Latin phrase, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order. It's another way of saying new humanity. The founding fathers saw this country as being creating a space for a new humanity. They didn't use that phrase, but they almost did. That's what they believed, a new humanity. Okay, what could grow from this country. And then also the Annuit Septus. He favors our undertakings. He favors our work. There is a spiritual destiny. They believe that this founding this country was divinely ordained. They really believe that. Okay, and that God was blessing this country and protecting it. Right? And all that is also symbolized by Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so Jupiter is the ruler of the rising sign. And then on our civil coins, E pluribus unum, out of many one. Well, that's out of many different nationalities will create one country, but from the highest spiritual point of view, it's out of the illusion into oneness. The spiritual interpretation of that. So here's. Here are the other degrees of where the planets are. I'll just won't go through them in very much detail, but for a country, Venus, for an individual, it's how you give and receive love, and it has a lot to do with how you make money, your personal, your self-esteem. And so Venus in a country would be how a country values and perceives the feminine, and its values related to love and money. Mars in our individuals is how we use our warrior energy, how we assert ourselves, how we make things happen. In a country, it's how the country channels this energy to accomplish goals. It also represents the military. All right? And that's in Gemini. Jupiter for a country symbolizes a country's cultural, legal, and religious institutions. And Saturn represents the nation's structures that maintain stabilities, the police, law and order. Okay? And the statutes and the officials empowered to enforce them. All right? Stability. All right? So, and Jupiter, the other thing I want to say about Jupiter is, which even makes it more powerful in the USA chart, is Jupiter's in the sign of Cancer. So each planet has a sign or two that it rules, okay? And another sign where it operates at its best, its happiest. It's called, exaltation, right? So Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. It's operating at its best. So think about that. It's spreading its generous rays and prosperity over all this, the Venus, Sun, Mercury, part of fortune, and it's in the sign of Cancer, and it's our ruling planet. It's like, wow. All I can say is, if this was an individual's chart I saw was doing this, I would be like, oh my God, this person is a very high being. They're going to be if they are successful, they're going to be really successful and prosperous. They're coming from a high place. But to have this for a country, and this explains our prosperity. Let's face it. I mean, And in a relatively short time, we've become the world's superpower. And I know there's a drawback to all that, but this is true. Okay? Yes.
So laws, and we've got lots of stuff going on about the structures and the
Yeah.
stability and the laws right now. What does Saturn in Libra mean?
Okay, yeah. And then the other thing is Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra.
And Baba had Saturn.
And Baba had, thank you, Baba had Saturn. So Libra is the relationship, seventh house, marriage. Marriage is a Saturnian institution. It takes hard work. Saturn has to do with the long term and hard work.
And
Okay?
it's also legal.
And
It's
legal.
the law.
Yeah, the law, that's right. Yeah, the justice,
It's
the balance, yeah.
That's the way it
So,
is.
so Saturn is happy and does well. So here we have the two planets that have to do with our institutions, our religious institutions, cultural institutions, our legal, our structures, the laws, are in signs where the Jupiter and Saturn, where they're exalted. That is another plus for the success of this country. They're at odds with each other. Libra and Cancer are clash in terms of signs. So there's the downside of that. The Saturn-Jupiter is that, again, it's isolationism. Saturn wants to kind of hold back. Saturn constricts as an energy. It's cold. It's the wintertime. It rules Capricorn. Saturn constricts. Jupiter expands. It's summer. It's the heat. So the Saturn-Jupiter square is one of the astrological reasons why there's been this lots of people, politicians over the years who favor isolationism. Don't get involved in other affairs. And like I said, Roosevelt had a really hard time getting, those people were very influential in Congress in the late 30s.
And it's important to know that he was an Aquarius.
And he was an Aquarius, yeah, right. He wanted to sell arms to England when Europe was being threatened, Hitler was running over, and they wouldn't let him sell. So we don't want to get involved. It took Pearl Harbor practically to wake them up, right? To get them out of that isolation. And that you can see that Saturn squared Jupiter. Jupiter is international, all right? And Cancer wants to help. It's that Saturn, even though it's in Libra, it's clashing with all those Cancer planets. Okay? That's also, I think, one of the symbols for the stingy streak. Saturn clashing with Cancer would be another way of saying, looking at in the chart, racism and what we did, the genocide with the Native Americans. That's one of the symbols. Okay, Saturn is tight-fisted, control freak. That would be a good way to describe it. And domination. Saturn's hierarchical, the boss, and it's clashing with all the positive Cancer planets in our chart. Here, let me just show it to you. There it is. Saturn's right here at 14 degrees of Libra. It's good in the sign it's in, and it's in a good house. It's happy there. But there's a 90-degree angle between Saturn and the Sun, particularly, and the Cancer. And it clashes with all the Cancer planets. So Saturn has two faces. Saturn is wisdom, maturity, goal-oriented, working hard. That's all positive. But it has a dark side. Controlling, domineering, critical, willing to do anything to protect itself. And so you can say part of the reason what we did, the racism, and using people for our own economic gain and stealing land is from this clash here. That's not the only thing, but that's part of it. Right. All right. Any questions? If I lost anybody?
Yeah, I always thought that Jupiter was exalted in Sagittarius, not in
No,
Cancer.
yeah, Jupiter rules the sign of Saturn. It's at home, but it's exalted in the sign of Cancer.
Can you describe the difference there? Personal question, though.
Yeah. Let me hear. I've got a thing here for exaltation. Hold on. See where I find it. A planet exalted, just it's like going on vacation somewhere that you really like. It's like going to the center or something from home. I don't know. It's like you're in a different house, you're in a different sign, but you feel really happy there. Okay. That's what I would say. It's a different place where you you can like just feel really good and express your best qualities. But your home is your home. So Jupiter's home is Sagittarius. But when it's traveling through the sign of Cancer, it feels really good. It feels really generous, really happy. Okay. Venus, for instance, rules 2 signs. Venus rules the sign of Libra, and it rules the sign of Taurus. But it's exalted in the sign of Pisces. So Venus does really well. Venus is happy in Pisces. Okay.
There's no responsibility. It's like if you're in your own home.
Yeah.
You know, they have to fix the plumbing.
Right. Yeah.
Mow
Yeah.
the lawn.
Right.
If you're on vacation, you know.
It's actually a very good metaphor.
It is.
What you just said.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say that
What?
before. The vacation.
Vacation.
It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Cool, okay.
Yeah.
There's a I kind of skipped over in Vedic teachings and astrology. Lord Ganesh and Jupiter. There's a think of Jupiter as Ganesh in some ways also. Indians have Ganesh in their home to bring prosperity and good luck. Okay, so there's a similarity.
Also, the astrologers in India, you can consider Ganesh like the patron saint
Yeah.
of,
Okay.
of astrology.
All right, now watch. Now I'm going to watch this. This is mind-boggling. Let's change it to do something visual here instead of me talking. I said Jupiter protects. We have this Jupiter protection, and there have been times in American history when it's like, oh my God, it was divine intervention. Manly P. Hall mentions a few of those in there, and here's one. Watch this. This is a PBS documentary about the War of 1812. Most people, the War of 1812, no, it's called the Forgotten War. No, right. But believe it or not, we were at war with England for the second time, because they were at war with France, and their navy, most powerful in the world, was stealing our ships that were trading with France and taking and sinking them and stealing our sailors, and it got to be too much. So we declared war on England.
So do the British. The invasion force returns to Benedict, Maryland, a battered and bewildered unit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Wow, oh, Bob.
This hurricane, there is no hurricane because the British came out from the south. They come from the south. It just appeared out of nowhere. And it picked up cannons, so at least 100-mile-an-hour winds, and then the tornado, and it's just like, it's like rapid. So that's an example of there's divine protection. If the British had kept the capital, the war could have been lost. That's bad news if they had stayed in the capital. They were driven out, and then they went on their way to Baltimore to do the same to Baltimore, and they failed there. And that's when the Star Spangled Banner was written. Okay. The other thing is saying, before we head on to what's happening now, I'll just emphasize a couple more things. You see this circle with an X? And that's a part of fortune. And it's a mathematical point. It's not a planet, but it's where, it's by sign and house. It's where, as an individual or as a country, we feel happy is expressing our talents, our abilities, our creativity. All right? So again, it's in Cancer here. And again, that says something about the American spirit as a Cancerian. We feel happy as a country doing our Cancer thing. And the vertex, that VX, is another point where fated, F-A-T-E-D, encounters happen, where there's karmic things happen, that someone shows up and changes your life, okay? And there's nothing you can plan. So when the part of fortune and the vertex come together, that's really unique, it's unusual. And here's 2 examples, just on a material level, that are pretty fascinating. How we just get things just fall in our lap. Here you go. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803. There it is. Look at the size of that. In the United States paid $15 million for the Louisiana. Even back then it was a bargain. The French were desperate for money. This vast territory encompassed 828,000 square miles, included what is now part of 15 states and was considered a bargain at the time. Okay? The Louisiana Purchase extended the United States sovereignty across the Mississippi, nearly doubling the size of the country for $15 million. Unbelievable, right? that would be Jupiter. There's this, and it's land. Cancer is land. So this gold, these fortuitous events, and that's just number one. Number two, the purchase of Alaska. All right, from Russia in 1876, we paid $7.2 million for Alaska, and that's 600,000 square miles. So you add the two up, you get 1,428,000 square miles of real estate for $22.2 million. That's unbelievable. And that, to me, is an example of what we're seeing here, the Jupiter blessing and the bounty, okay, just falling in our lap. Russia was desperate for money. All right. Actually, I want to say one more thing, and then we'll look at what's happening now. Now you're going to get an astronomy lesson. You're going to leave here qualified astrologers, and you never know. All right. So everyone has 2 birth charts, believe it or not. Most people think you only have 1 birth chart. That birth chart up there with the planets in the sign, Venus in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, Mars in Gemini, that is just one dimension of our total birth chart. That's the planets in the sign. The planets in the signs are the longitudes. You know the longitudinal lines that run around the planet, with the central one runs through Greenwich Village, right? And east and west. Okay. But if you extend them into space, they intersect with the constellations. So the planets in the signs have to do with longitudes. What is rarely spoken about is latitudes. The latitudes are the lines that run like this, starting with the equator. The equator line is 0 degrees of latitude, and then the lines go up to 90, north and south. Okay, this is the origin of our second birth chart. Now, if you take the equator line, circle, and expand it out into space, let's say beyond the far edges of the solar system, all right? And that's what astronomers do. Here's what it looks like. So this is the equator, and it's at 0 degrees of latitude. Now, if you extend that out into space, the dotted lines, and this circle then, this giant circle is really the equator going big, okay? They call it the celestial equator, all right? And then, again, out in space, you have north of the celestial equator, and you have south of the equatorial equator. It so happened, and the Earth, what I forgot to show you, as the Earth goes around the sun, it's tilted. It's not straight up and down. It's tilted at an angle of 23.5 degrees, right? And it goes around the sun like this. And that's what creates the seasons. If it was straight up and down, we wouldn't have any seasons. All right? So it's the tilt of it. So it just so happens that as the planets south. I'll show you this 23.5 degrees north. All right? All the planets, as Venus, Mars, Jupiter, as they're doing their orbit around the sun, from the point of view of the Earth, they're only within this band of 23 degrees north of the celestial equator, or 23 degrees south on this side too. Does that make sense? There's a band. All right? Occasionally they go beyond that, and that's called out of bounds. I want to explain that. So if planets could be anywhere as they're doing their orbit. It could be, you'll see it's a number, 10 degrees, it would be plus, 10 degrees north, so many minutes. 20 degrees south, so many minutes. That is your second birth chart, and that's information that either adds to your natal chart or qualifies it or amplifies it. And here's how it works, 2 ways. As planets get close to that boundary line, if they happen to be around 22 degrees, 20 degrees north or south, they become more intense in expression. They become, the person identifies with them more, okay? And when they go out of bounds, occasionally past that, then it's like a loose cannon. That particular planet is really powerful, and sometimes you get genius, you get really unusual creative expressions of that, okay? So this is giving you extra information about Okay, Venus may be in someone's chart might be at, say, 10 degrees of Libra, but it's also at 20 degrees north above of latitude. And now I know that Venus is really strong, okay? So that tells me something extra. And so occasionally, so here are the different planets, say just Venus, Mars, Jupiter. Occasionally they come together, all right? So let's say Mars is at 10 degrees north, and Uranus is at 11 degrees north, within a degree. And that acts like a conjunction in the signs. Mars and Uranus might not have any connection in the signs, all right? But in the declination, they're together. That adds another dimension of dynamics to the person's psyche. Think of this. Let's say a person has a lot of gentle planets and signs. They're Pisces, they're Virgo and Libra. Those are pretty gentle signs. They're not real forceful. But there's something about them that doesn't fit. Wait a minute, this person is really powerful, is a really good athlete, and it just doesn't fit this sweet, gentle Piscean, and I don't see it anywhere in the chart. Then you look at the declinations and you see, oh, the Sun and Pluto are parallel, or Mars and Pluto. There it is. There's a whole different side to them that is totally missed by here. So just like if you want to know where a city or town is on the globe, if you only give the longitude, that could be anywhere between the North Pole and the South Pole along that line. To get the precisely locate a city or town on the globe, you need longitude and latitude. Likewise with astrology, with the planets, to understand them fully, you need to get the planets and the signs, longitude, and the declinations are called, okay? I want to look at the USA's declinations. So planets are considered parallel when two or more planets are at the same degree, north or south, give or take a degree, all right? It acts like a conjunction. And they're contraparallel when one is, say, 10 degrees north and the other one's 10 degrees south. That acts like an opposition. So there's a kind of bit of a war between them that may not appear in the regular chart. Now there's a unique situation, and you're going to see this in the USA chart. What if you have two planets that are conjunct in the signs, and that happens in the USA chart? You see Venus and Jupiter? All right, Venus is at 3 Cancer. Jupiter's at 5, and the Sun is at 13 Cancer. I would include the Sun in that. So you got 3 planets that are fairly close together. With that, but if you look at the declinations, that tells you something. That's powerful. Jupiter conjuncting the Sun is one of the best things to be born with. Just that in itself. All right. Individuals I've done charts who have that are generally, not that they don't have hard times, but they have a protection. And they're usually coming from a high place. Okay? It's something you earned. You've earned that in the past life, to be born with Jupiter conjunct the Sun. Okay? And the fact that the U.S. has this in the chart, and the Jupiter's in Cancer. Some people think that an astrologer selected this date. That it couldn't have been random. All right? And some people think Ben Franklin, who knew. But that's guesswork. But it is so good. The chart is so good in that sense that people think, oh, come on, it couldn't just be random. All right, so, and then if you look at the declinations of, here they are. You'll see them in this, it's too small now, but let me show you what the astrology software shows you. Here they are. This line, can you see this? I can't make it any bigger. See this? That's declination. Those numbers are plus, those planets are north, and minus, they're south. So, and the pink one means they're out of bounds. I'll explain that. So I just wrote them out here. Here's the declinations. The Sun on July 4th, 1776 is at 22 degrees, 48 minutes north. Venus, 23 degrees. Mars, 24 degrees. Jupiter, 23 degrees. So you got Sun, Venus, Jupiter, Uranus, 21, and Pluto is 23 degrees south. All right? That's amazing. That alignment, it like triples the power, or just amplifies the power of what's in the signs by the fact that these many planets are parallel, and it's Jupiter doing it. Okay, so there's the explanation. You got this amazing chart with Jupiter and Cancer, and you have it that emphasized and stamped, boom, even harder in the declinations. And
They're also all opposite.
yeah, and Jupiter, Pluto opposes all these.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just say that much, what that's about, because you see that in the
That's the
chart.
shadow.
Here's Pluto in Capricorn, opposes all the Cancer planets, particularly Mercury. And Pluto is in the second house, which is money, which is personal possessions. Wherever Pluto is in the chart, it's a two-headed coin. Pluto is where we want to make it in the material world and cling to that, whatever that is, money, possessions, land, relationship, fame, career. This is what makes me secure in the material, and I want to stay here, and I never want to leave it because it's working for me. I got this bit of thing going in the material world, and I'm going to hold on to it with this Plutonian power, and you're not going to take this from me. And this is it's indicated wherever Pluto is in the chart. Okay, the opposite side of Pluto, the flip of that coin, it's the evolutionary impulse. It's that divine spark in us that says you can't stay there. You know, you've done that for 4 lifetimes. Now it's time to move on. And you either cooperate with that, or if you don't cooperate with it, you're going to have a major crisis in your life. You'll get ripped out of that. It'll be taken away from you by death, disease, war, whatever. If you cooperate, then the transformation happens more peacefully. That's what Pluto is about. But in the USA chart, this Pluto opposes all the Cancer. And Pluto in Capricorn. And since the beginning of the country, and it goes on today, it's the Pluto in Capricorn is that wealth, desire for its greed. And that's what Baba said. It's corporate greed, it's individual greed, it's wealthy families who don't want to share the good things that have come from being able to succeed so much in this country. And their energy is opposing the generous Jupiterian Cancer. And there's been this war of conflict of values that goes on today and has been there from the beginning. You know, like Bob said, the British loyalists who were business people, they don't want to separate from England. They were doing well, they were prosperous, you know, and on and on. And the robber barons, they didn't want to pay taxes, right? They fought any kind of regulations. When I'm reading a biography of Franklin Roosevelt, oh my God, with the New Deal, these 60 families or more and the wealthy, they fought every part of it, tooth and nail, Social Security, communism, socialism, you know, taxing, progressive taxes for the rich. They fought it tooth and nail. You're a dictator, you know. Roosevelt had to fight for everything. The cancer. He was expressing Aquarian, Cancerian to help people survive the Depression. This greedy, represented by Pluto and Capricorn, fought him tooth and nail. And they defeated a lot of it. They were successful. That's been there since the beginning. And this is one of the difficulties in our natal chart. And it still happens today. Okay? So, yeah. The other one fits in. This is where Baba nails. The other difficulty is Mars square Saturn in the chart. This is what Baba now spoke about. I'll show it to you. There's Mars, 21 degrees Gemini.
Square Neptune?
Pardon? Right there.
Neptune or
No, Mars is at 20. Yes, Mars is at 21 degrees Gemini.
Yeah.
It's 90 degrees from Neptune. At
Okay.
22 degrees, pretty close square.
Yeah.
All right. I'll show you what Baba said about it, and then I'll show you what the meaning of that is. When questioned about America's problem, Mayor Baba stated, America has great energy, but a great deal of it is misdirected. And misdirected energy produces destructive complexes. And these in turn produce fear, greed, lust, and anger, which result in moral and spiritual decay. And here's a quote from Astrology.com. I just pulled it off the internet. Mars square Neptune can create a state of confusion and difficulty and distinguishes between reality and illusion, leading to misdirected energy. Right? That's the low vibe of that. He picked right up on that. And he said, this occurs because Mars, representing action and directness, interacts with Neptune, associated with dreams, imagination, blurring the boundary. Mars square Neptune is also associated with passive aggressiveness, self-deception, addiction, immoral or mean actions, and strange or perverted desires. Here are some of the ways it can go. Going off in the wrong direction because of poor planning, under or overestimating what is required to succeed, deluding oneself about one's capabilities and others, indecisiveness, changing plans, not being honest about one's intentions and motives for actions, U.S. government breaking every treaty we ever made with with Native Americans, Mars, Neptune. We lied to them. We said we're going to honor this, and then 2 years later we rip it up. Distorting reality, conspiracy theories, not facing facts, anti-science, blaming others, not taking responsibilities for bad results. And our misguided wars, particularly since end of World War II, lying about how we got into Vietnam. The Gulf Tonkin incident was bullshit. It was a red, what do you call it, red flag? Yeah.
False flag.
Yeah, false flag. And then just getting into horrible jam there. Thinking we can go into Afghanistan, like no country has succeeded there, and just 10 years there. The wars we've got into, most of them since the end of World War II when we became a world power, has been a lot of this misguided energy, okay? And that's, Mars is the military. It's thinking, not looking at the facts, not looking at the reality of it, just being based on idealism. And the other extreme of that is another Mars Neptune connection will be isolationism. Those two, either going about it wrong or not doing it at all. Okay, so maybe what happened yesterday might fit into that too. Sexual abuse. Okay, so that's one of the problems. So U.S. also has the Saturn-Sun clash. I spoke about that. Our ambivalence towards immigrants, our racism, slavery. The other thing it represents, actually, Saturn squared Neptune is also positive. Okay, I've got my first cousin has Saturn squared Neptune. He was a 4-star Marine general, 2 master's degree, but it's ambition and working hard. Okay, and so there's a positive. Some people with Sun square, Saturn's like a slave driver, and you want to keep accomplishing. So there's a good dimension to that. But there's also, in America, throughout our history, there's a conservative strain. That's Saturn is conservative, disapproval of government assistance programs, which would be Cancer, Neptune. They're lazy, they're et cetera, et cetera. Saturn likes hierarchical power structure. Power resides at the top. All right. So we've always had this fear of socialism, collective unions. You know that have been unions have had to fight for their existence. And, that would be Aquarius, the unions. Okay?
Where can you read about what Baba had to say about America?
Oh, it's in the Lord Mayhair.
Mm-hmm.
Different places. Yeah. The other thing about Saturn square Neptune is, like I said, it's work. But work. The U.S. has the meanest vacation policy given by employees in the world. Yeah, there's only one country that's worse, Micronesia. Right? And the employers don't have to give vacation time in this country. It's to their discretion. All right. So it's like that's the Saturn square Neptune. Austria is the most generous country in the world. Austria gets employees get 25 days of paid vacation, plus 13 public holidays. Wow. And Germany, I lived in England. As soon as you start a job, you automatically have 6 weeks. You can start taking it. You don't have to work for 5 years yet. And they get 2 weeks of 10 days of bank holidays. So they're always taking vacation. They're always flying to the Mediterranean, back and forth Germans. It's like, and here, it's like, boy, if you take 3 days in a row, you got to fight for that, right? I know of Australians who I read about who came here to work, And this said, screw this, because Australians are so generous with their holiday, they just went back to Australia. So that's why Europeans, well, most Europeans don't want to move here. They've got all that holiday time, they got free health care, education's almost free or almost free. It's usually the third world country people that want to come here for that reason. All right, we got the Saturn and Moon clash in the state, and that creates depression. Whenever you see Saturn and Moon, unhappy childhood, poor bad mothering. There's been so much family abuse. We're this Cancer family, but there's so much abuse going way back to the beginning. And USA has some of the worst mental health related outcomes in the world. We have the highest suicide rate and among the highest rates of depression among wealthy nations, even though we're so prosperous. And
Is the clash because the moon is in a Saturn rule sign, or what?
It's a 135-degree angle between
sesquiquadrate.
That's a square and a half. That's what's the word? Sesquiquadrate. Yeah. So it's not easy to see on the chart. It's not visually easy, but the software tells you. So that 27 degrees Aquarius clashes with Saturn. So Saturn clashes with the Sun and most of the Cancer planets, and it clashes with the Moon. So to answer your question. To answer your question, this is where it's the Saturn clashes and this Pluto opposition, and the Mars square Neptune that would account for the shadow side, the dark side of America. Okay, as far as I see. The lunar nodes. Let me just talk about
Can
that.
I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you
Feel
go
that.
into the notes?
Yeah.
I had heard a long time ago that the founding of the United States was actually, I don't remember the exact wording, but that it was, we were founded with a whole archetypal energy of war.
Yeah.
And I was looking at my notes here, and there are a lot of 13-degree cancers, like the sun for the United States. I wrote some of this down.
Yeah.
Just way too much information for me to get it all, but 13 degrees Cancer. And you had said several times when you were saying that, that 13 degrees is an Aries degree,
That's right. Yeah.
quote unquote. That's all I remember.
That's the system I use.
Yeah, well, I don't understand that, so I wanted to ask about that, but in relation to, I had just heard years ago that the United States really was founded in Aries, and Aries archetypally is the god of war. When
Right.
we talk about archetypes, so.
Well, you mean it was founded in late March, or?
No. They weren't denying that it was.
Or it had Aries rising?
But it was in the sign of war. And
But I get it from here. So in other words, 13 degrees Cancer, the sun is Cancer, but there's a subtone of Aries,
which is
of assertive, power, warlike. Yeah. Just because, and same thing with the ascendant, 13 Sag. It's the positive Sagittarian, but 13 is an Aries degree, so there's that aggressive side.
Can you
to
say
it.
something more about that? I'd like to understand that.
Where I get that?
Well, no, where you get it, well, how you come to that. Yeah.
Okay, now any planet at 1 degree, 1 is the first sign, first degree, Aries. Add 12, go around once, 12 and 1, 13. So the next pops up again at 13 degrees. Any planet at 13 degrees of any sign has an Aries quality to it, no matter what sign it's in, even if it's Pisces. Add 12 more, 25. So 1, 13, and 25 are all degrees. This helps you to get a little more specific about the meaning of degrees. Not everyone agrees with this system, but there's this guy was a Serbian astrologer that uses it. It's not like it seems to.
What's his name?
I forget offhand. Yeah. And 2, 14, and 26 are Taurian degrees. Okay, so etc. So Aries is strong too in the U.S. strong.
It's about 3:35. About 3:35, which is.
All right. Is someone waiting for us?
No, I'm just saying
Okay,
it
yeah.
was the scheduled
All
time.
right,
So
yeah.
if you want to take.
Let's just go on. I'll skip what I was going to say. I want to jump to what's happening now. Let's get to that. All right. So astrologers can look at current transits, what's happening, looking at where are the planets today, and what are they doing to the natal chart as transits and progressions. There's two kinds of progression, but a progression is on your 30th birthday, 1 year equals 1 day. So if you were born, whatever your day of birth, add 30, look ahead 30 days, and that corresponds to your 30th year. progression. All right? So you look at where the planets are 30 days after you're born, compare them to your natal chart. And so transits are where they are now, and progressions are, if you're 70 years old, you look at where the planets were 70 days after you're born and compare them to the natal chart. And that tells you trends that are happening. It's like time release capsule. Think of progressions as like time release capsule. It's when your karma, you can see when the karma gets released. Okay. All right. So, most of what's, here's things that are happening for the whole world, and then I'll tune in on America. Right now, for the whole world, Saturn is conjuncting Neptune in early Aries. That's a tough one. You might hear people say they're feeling anxious, depressed, can't sleep, kind of cut off. All right, they just feel that there's stress. That's what happens when Saturn and Neptune come together, particularly in conjunction. Saturn constricts, and Neptune is our connection to the divine. And what's happening in the world is this Saturn fear, constriction, is blocking people's natural access to their soul. And that creates depression and fear and anxiety. And suicide rate goes up. More people are going for therapy and depression, taking antidepressants. This happens periodically, and you can trace it in history. It's also when Saturn's conservative forces kind of get power and control. Is what's happening now. All right? And it's going to last for, what did I say? So it started last fall, came in exact, around the election, and it's going to last until December of 27, this particular, or even beyond that. It depends on the order. All right? The whole world is feeling it. This is a global phenomenon. But it's built into the fabric of the universe. This happens periodically. And the challenge during this time is Neptune is our spirituality, is okay, I've got to dig deeper to survive this. I can give in to despair, or I can slash my wrist, or I can go deeper and work harder to keep that connection to my divine, to my soul. That's what's demanded in that time. Yeah?
I was just going to say, you can think of Saturn as fear.
Fear.
And Neptune as faith.
Faith, right.
And they're in an inverse ratio with each other.
Yeah.
Fear goes up, the
Fear
faith
goes up.
goes down.
They're in
The
great.
faith goes up, the fear goes down.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
we have our get out of jail free card by just concentrating on our faith in Baba.
Yeah, yeah. The challenge now for Baba lovers is more than ever to keep that hold on his Daman and focus on him, because the outer world is not very important. That's right. The outer world, things happen in the outer world that are so distressing. If you don't have a spiritual path, you want us to slight your wrist, so get out of here. You know, that's Saturn Neptune. That's going on now. So that's one explanation. Okay, I need to leave. So, okay, all right.
I'll be back.
The positive, there's a good thing happening, is the three outer planets, the gods of change, are all in a good relationship to each other for several years. Pluto, Uranus is about to go into Gemini, and Pluto's in Aquarius, and that's a smooth, harmonious trine. And then Neptune's right in between in Aries, 60 degrees, that's harmonious. So the gods of change are shaking hands and embracing each other, and that's going to help the world make the transitions that it does. And that's going to be in effect for 30 till 2032 or something. So we've got that working for us, okay, to offset the Saturn-Neptune. And then Pluto went into Aquarius. Now, Pluto in Aquarius has actually progressed. Whenever Pluto goes in a sign, it transforms it. It clears out obstacles that from the past that are inhibiting its better expression, and that can be a crisis. But it actually brings about a higher expression. So Aquarius is it's progressive. The age of Aquarius. So I think the period we're in is this the initial period of Pluto and Aquarius here that we're in is the conservative forces versus the progressive forces. So the fact that Pluto's in Aquarius till 2044, almost 19 years, is in the long term. It's going to be working in favor of progressive values. Okay. It's also Aquarius has so much to do with science and technology. AI would be Aquarian, and what's going to happen with AI is hard to imagine. Okay. And other technology. that we won't even recognize. Yeah. Okay. So those are the supportive. Unfortunately, the vast majority of things that are happening now for the states, let me find it down here somewhere, are difficult. And I'm going to go through most of them. We're in for it. I tried to give you the good news first. I did. One thing that's happening that we're just kind of coming to the end of, but it's still in effect, is our Chiron return. Does anybody know about Chiron?
Yeah.
Okay, Chiron is here in U.S. in Aries. Aries is leadership in the fifth house. Creative leadership would be, to me, the phrase for Aries in the fifth. And Chiron is the wounds, the deepest wounds that we carry. But Chiron takes 52 years to make one revolution around the sun. So every 52 years is a Chiron return. Think back what happened to you at around 51, 52. It's often a very painful crisis when we get in touch with our deepest wounds. There's some crisis, painful thing happens in your life that's like, and you get through that. I don't know, surrender more. All you can do is surrender. Chiron is the wound that you can't heal. It could be on any level, physical, emotional, mental. It could be like stuttering. It could be emotional. It could be intellectual, ADHD. No matter what you do, you can't solve it. You just surrender. Saturn wounds you can heal over with time. Chiron wounds you have to surrender because there's nothing you can do about it. Turn it over to Baba. Okay? That's Chiron. But through doing that, you become a wiser, deeper healer. Chiron is the healer. Okay? All right, so the Chiron return is difficult. And U.S. has just been having it. It actually kicked in. I put the dates here. This is our fifth Chiron return. The last one was Watergate. So the last Chiron return U.S. had was Watergate. Watergate.
Oh, Watergate.
There's often, I said that our Chirons in Aries and in the fifth house, creative leadership. There's often some big shit happens in that level of leadership or presidential behavior that's working to the whole country. Watergate. The one before that was Harding's Teapot Dome scandal, which was the Harding administration in the 20s was really corrupt. And there's all these scandals. And that was lit. And you go on back every 52 years, it's a national crisis that's painful for you. We're just going through it now. Okay, so that's part of it.
How long does it last?
Well, let me tell you this. When Baba had his first one at age 52, his second Chiron, do you remember the late 90s, what happened here in this community? Do you remember what?
Yeah.
What happened? Yeah, so the Charles, that happened during Baba's second Chiron return. The pain that this community went through, Baba and everybody, it was so painful in the split. And the effects of that are still there. That's interesting. It didn't happen during Baba's second. Because you figure every 52 years, so he was 104. He was 108 in 1994, add 4 years. So it's 1998 when that happened, the second Chiron return. Okay? And that, the pain and the community that came up was horrible, right? And so now it's national Chiron return that we've had. And it lingers. It doesn't just, okay, the exact thing is over. The pain lingers. Okay, so it's just the exact is just ending. It was exact for the final time in April, but we're still, the pain of it, it kicked in exact, actually in 23, and it was exact again on election day. Yeah. So that's what this.
Question?
Yes.
I actually have to go because I have to go check in. But what is the birth time you have for Meher Baba? You guys mentioned it.
Oh yeah, it's 5 a.m.
Exactly 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
5 a.m. in India.
Pune, India, 1894.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not going to go through all 10. They're all challenging and difficult, but I'm going to highlight a couple here. And this is one that's really interesting. U.S. is about to have its Uranus return. All right? Uranus takes 84 years to go around the sun. So every 84 years, there's Uranus return. And Uranus is strong in the USA chart. The first Uranus return was the Civil War. We got started with the Revolutionary War. That was the first one. The second Uranus return was the Civil War. Our third Uranus return, World War II. astrologers, what's the buzz? They're all buzzed. It's coming up again. It's going to go into, it's going to tiptoe. Uranus was at 8 degrees Gemini. Let me show you.
But it's there for a long time. It's not like-
Yeah, 7 years in a sign. 7 years in each sign. 7 times 12 is 84. Here it is. 8 degrees of Gemini in the natal chart. So it's going to go tiptoe into Gemini starting next month, and then go back to Taurus. But it's not until next spring that it goes into Gemini and stays there for 7 years. And it's in, it becomes exact in 27, is it? I'll read this quote. I got this from an astrologer who's studied astrology in American history. Whenever transiting Saturn has been in the sign of Gemini every 84 years, the United States has found itself in a very big war. The U.S. has been in several wars since its founding, but whenever Uranus is in Gemini, it's a war that tends to redefine, that B should be there, the United States or America by the time it's over. Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II. When Lincoln said 7 years ago, score is 20 years, that's 87 years. He's making, in his own way, a reference to the fact that the whole Uranus cycle has passed between the Declaration of Independence and when he's delivering the Gettysburg Address. Right. Essentially, the U.S. reinvents itself every 84 years. Uranus entry again into the sign of Gemini starting next month suggests there could very well be another one of these big wars, the result of which, by the end in 2033, would see the United States becoming a different country in some fashion, redefining itself. So, the way it's heading, oh boy, I mean, the protests that are building up, the no kings, the protests, they're not going to, all the astrological signs, it's not going to just go away.
Yeah, but is that all defined by war, or is that defined by transformation?
What? This?
The 84 years, yeah. Because
well,
is it always
both.
war?
Both. The U.S. comes out of it a different country.
But it doesn't have to be war.
No one can predict. If you just, all astrologers are saying that the last two, we got started in a war, and the two Uranus returns coincided with the war. So the big question mark is, we're coming up on our third one. Is it going to be a war again? Also, Neptune was in Aries during the Civil War. Neptune's in Aries again. So the configuration that was happening in the Civil War with Neptune and Uranus is repeating itself. But Neptune hasn't been in Aries since the Civil War.
What if we went backwards before the revolution, before that?
You could do that.
Well, I'm just saying, what was,
what
was that place then? Well, we were here.
What's the...
Well, I'm just saying, it says every 84 years.
Yeah, so the U.S. was founded when 84 years from July 4, 1776.
Right. So what about 84 years before that?
Well, we were in a country.
We were here, we were a country.
Yeah, but we weren't a nation. The birth chart is July 4, 1776. That's
so you say it only applies to the nation?
To the nation. That's
okay.
That's only applies to to your, if it was your transit, it would be your birthday. I'm using the birthday of the U.S. Yeah. Good point.
What's the date of what we're talking about right now, the Gemini?
Yeah. So
is that now?
Yeah.
It goes in next month.
Next month.
Let me see. You know what ephemeris is? You may not. This is where the planets are on any. Every month.
Next month.
Yeah. So next month, Uranus on actually July 7th, right? It goes into Gemini, and then it goes retrograde on September 5th, and it goes back into Taurus on November 9th for a few months. It's in Taurus again, going backwards, and then it goes direct and re-enters Gemini on April 26th, up 26th.
So it's my birthday.
That's great. And then it stays in for 7 years. Uranus stays 7 years, and 7 times 12 signs is 84. So Uranus will be in the sign of Gemini for 7 years.
So does that mean coming out the other side of it isn't really for another 7 years?
Yeah, that's what's happened before. Yeah, when we come out of that will be in Uranus goes into Cancer August of 32. It'll be a different country. So it's leaning towards. I mean, I don't think this polarity, these protests, these things that are stirring up. We're in a civil war. It's already. How this one happens, is it going to be like, it'll be different. The two wars we're seeing. How's it going to, who knows? is California going to secede from the Union? It's like anything seems possible now. But it's for the next several years, when I add up all the transits, all the things that are happening, it's going to be painful and difficult. I've got some good news though, before I end.
No, I want to hear more about the pain.
Yeah, right.
Big friends with
Bring
on the
Bring on the pain. Oh, the other thing that's interesting is the U.S., we just had our first and only Pluto return. Pluto was at 27 degrees right here of Capricorn on July 4th, 1776. It takes 240 years to go around. So individuals never get a Pluto return. England has had 3, I think, if you use 1066, that's the beginning of that country. And every time England had a Pluto return, there was a constitutional crisis. Battle between the king and the barons and how much power the king has, taken away power, back and forth. And England survived that. So we just had Pluto's in Aquarius, but the 4 years of Biden's administration coincided with our Pluto return. And it's a constitutional crisis. It's going. That's what kicked it. Okay. Would you agree with that?
No, that explains everything.
There it is. No. So Pluto returns for a country or a constitutional crisis, pretty much. How does the power get distributed? Pluto is about power, and it's a battle for power between different sections of the government, the people, the king, the Senate, the president, the Congress, the people, and how does that get? Does the Constitution need to be rewritten because it doesn't work anymore, which just seems true to me. It needs to be revised. But how do you get everyone on the same page to revise the Constitution? But that it's written about. You read it in the papers. It's a constitutional crisis that's happening. That coincides with our. It's the only one we had, the Pluto return. It's not going to happen again for 240 years.
So we're good for 200 some years.
Yeah, the squares and the opposition. But I'm saying this is another reason we're in a critical period of USA history. Okay, that. And then, and in 2006, something happened. Occasionally, in your life as an individual, a planet will progress. If it's direct when you were born, planets sometimes appear to go retrograde in the sky. So maybe at age 20, for instance, it could stop and turn backwards, and then now for the rest of your life, progress Mars as retrograde. You were born with it direct, but I'm just saying at age 30 it turns retrograde. All right, and that means there's a shift in how you use your Martian energy. Okay, you become more aware of it. You become more individuated than you were. There's some crisis that happens related to Mars. Maybe you were in a who knows? Maybe you're in a hostile relationship, or something happened that's made you. I've had it. I can't take this. I'm setting boundaries, etc. All right, and that stays with you for the rest of your life. USA Mars, 200 and some years after our birth, turned retrograde in 2006. All right, there's been a shift in how we're, and I think that's when this use of violence and threats of violence against political figures, for one thing, and violence as a tool to create change. I think that's when that started happening. Okay, and just this past week, in Minnesota, what happened? That violence is seen as a tool, and that shift seemed to happen around that time, 2000. So it's going to be retrograde for a long time. So we've got to come to terms. Well, Baba said, I plan to redirect this misdirected Mars-Neptune. Well, how would an individual do that? Well, if an individual is using Neptune's lowest vibe, addictions and abuse and escapism and seductiveness, to raise it up, it would have to be into the realm of art or self-serve service of some kind. That's how you raise it up. And then the highest level would be spirituality. So it's not like the Mars-Neptune square in US stops. Baba's going to say, that's not there anymore. He's going to raise it up to a higher level. I'm going to redirect it. And it's misdirected. He's right. It's misdirected. He's going to raise, when he breaks his silence, that Mars-Neptune is going to raise up to a higher artistic achievements, athletic achievement, but spiritual selfless service. Neptune is about service. Okay? And we put in our energy into what he said about the nature of this country. It'd be a good place to end. I'll read the quote. Here's a quote from Bob. After all the current chaos in the world, there will be a complete change. A new world order will rise in which all are equal. It won't be communism, socialism, or fascism. Another place he said it won't be democracy either, okay? Which are all formed on a material basis. My plan will be on a spiritual basis, in which there will be no poor and no rich, but all given equal status communally. Now that sounds like spiritual socialism to me. It does, doesn't it? All are equal, and the poor and the rich will have shared resources. That's the thing that Pluto and Capricorn says in the USA chart has been saying no to since our founding. Now this last sentence. Great nations that have enjoyed a predominance of power for so long, that's got to be the United States, will now have a fall and will be on a par with others. This is what I think is what's happening. And over the next 10 years, U.S.'s ego, we're the greatest country in the world, you can't stop, we do what we want, we don't have to listen to the UN, that's gone. We're going to be just one among equal.
What happened to England?
What happened? Let's go and use England.
Wouldn't
England was the
why?
great superpower for 200 years. Now it's like this is another, small country. That's what's going to happen in the United States, China, and Russia. And it's through this process that's going on. Even the things we think are horrible, the U.S.'s ego is going to get crunched. And after that is when the new humanity will emerge. That's what I think. That's my interpretation. So it's going to be pain. Just like getting your ego crunched, it's painful. This is what's happening.
Did I hear you say China and Russia would be in that too?
I would think so. They're world superpowers. Yeah.
So
There won't be any world
everybody
superpowers.
half across board then.
Won't be any world superpowers.
So in other words, the golden age.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is where I'm going next for the next presentation. Let me read it. This is really hopeful. So these 10 years are going to be really difficult. On August 10th, there's an astrologer I just stumbled on whose name is Roseanne Fitt. Okay, and she discovered this Pluto cycle. Pluto is the planet of transformation. I didn't get a chance to talk about out of bounds.
Yeah.
When planets go beyond the 23 degrees, they're like loose cannons, and they can they are. The person could be a genius or just a really unique individual. So Pluto occasionally, over long periods, goes out of bounds north and south in this sine wave cycle. I think there's about, I'm not sure, I have to look again, but I'll have it down when I do this sort of thing, about 100 to 150 years between Pluto out of bounds north and south. She found, going way back in history, a repeating pattern. When Pluto was out of bounds, because Pluto's about power, when Pluto's out of bounds north, and it was usually lasts about 20 years, that's when tyrants and dictators and the abuse of power, they gain control. Okay? And then as it fades down over 100 years, gradually the people there's an urge, a need for justice at the 0 point. When Pluto goes out of bounds south, that's when the revolutions start. People stand up for their rights during that 20-year period. Okay? They fight the tyrants and win. Okay? The good news is two things. Pluto is about to go out of bounds south in September for 10 years. Okay, from September of 25 until 2030. And out of bounds south, historically, based on her research, and there's a long interview with her, which I'm going to show, and I'll explain her theory in more detail. When Pluto's out of bounds south, that's when the people stand up for their rights and for their and oppose tyrants. So that's the phase we're entering into for 10 years. But the other interesting thing she found, Pluto used to be for centuries out of bounds for 20 years at a time, north or south. It's gotten less and less and less, and that's because of its elliptical orbit. This, she says, is the last time Pluto will be out of bounds north or south for over 3,000 years.
Wow.
Going way, and it's probably longer. She couldn't go past. What that means, she says, is, in her terms, new humanity. Because there won't be any abuse of power to fight back from. It's only when Pluto's out of bounds north that the extreme abuse of power happens in terms of dictators and authoritarian government. And then that creates a kickback. We're going to enter a whole new era starting in 2035, gradually. So that fits in totally with these transits of the states, 10 years. From now until 35. And then when Pluto completes its out of bounds south, it's going to, and so the new humanity, I think, and there's other astrological indicators, I don't have time to explain, that seems to be the time period. So that's real hopeful. And this is really inspiring what she found. I'm going to show the whole interview and explain it in more detail, her research. So that's August 10th. All right, good. Okay, any comments, questions?
So your comment about this Pluto descending after below the 23.
Yeah, it goes
When does that
beyond
start?
23 degrees and a half
But
south.
when does that start? Did you say?
September, this,
This
2
September.
months. Yeah.
Did you, until?
Yeah, and it goes in and out. For 10 years, it doesn't stay out of bounds. It goes in and out for about half the year, and then, but it's in and out for 10 years. But it used to be 20 years, but it's gotten less and less. And I think this must be a huge cycle. If you go way back, there must be long periods in the past where a piece when Pluto was not going out of bounds. And then there's a huge several thousand-year period where it does go out of bounds, and that's just ending. And now we're entering into a new 3,000-year plus one where it's not going out of bounds. So a big change. And that could be the cycle, one of the meanings of Baba's cycle of cycles, you know, because it's a huge, long cycle.
So starting in September of this year, we're going to be, the energy will be to stand up for our rights. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, it's already happening.
Okay.
That's
And
already
then the
happening.
other question is you were going to bring up the nodes, the north and south nodes.
Yeah, I know.
Say
Do you want
something about that.
do people want to stay in here? I can keep it brief.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, the north and south nodes are, in anyone's individual chart, are, let me find it. Well, just let me show it in the chart and I can explain it. Whatever. All right, here we go. See the horseshoes here?
Yeah.
See that? That's the lunar north node. And here, directly opposite is the lunar south node. And they are points. It's the intersection of the Earth, the sun's apparent motion around the Earth and the moon's orbit around the sun. It's a moving point. And it goes through all the signs every 18 and a half years. So those, in your individual life, those are key periods in your life. At age 18 and a half, you had your first lunar return. That's usually when you leave home and go to college. Age 35, 36 is another adult transition point, key one. People realize their career ideas, they get more focused after that second lunar return. So what do they mean? Generally, the lunar north node, let me start with the south node. The south node is your past life. It represents it's evolutionary astrology explanation. It's a behavior pattern, a lifestyle, or it could be traumas that in recent lives that it's our comfort zone also. If it's not trauma, it's a comfort zone. It's what we did too much of. It's where, like I said, Pluto gets attached. Hey, this is working. I can stay here forever, man. It's like, great, this is cool. I got my needs met. I don't want to go anywhere else. But evolution is not going to let you stay there. The south node represents the sign and place where you did that and what you need to let go of to progress spiritually. The north node is the exact opposite. It's what you need to do to balance out those impressions. It's always a balancing act. Okay? And people up in their 20s, they usually try to do their south node because they know it, it's comfortable, and it worked in a past life, but what they find is, man, this isn't working anymore. I gotta do something else. The way I was with career, the way I was in relationships, the way I think about myself, that's familiar, but it's not working in this. I'm in this new life form now, this new birth. I got to do something else. And they always come up with, unconsciously, the north node. This is the answer. That's what they move to. Okay, and it's fun to explain it to them in astrology. And they go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So in the U.S. is north node, south node, north node is, the south node is Aquarius. Okay, and I think that refers to when the colonies, England ruled the world. They were a vast empire, and the colonies were just a little side show for them. There was no big deal. That wasn't even their main war. They had other things to worry about. And they didn't send their best troops here.
They were an empire.
Yeah, they did not send their best troops here to fight the Revolutionary War. It's like, this is a piece of cake. It wasn't. But, Aquarius. So Aquarius means you're just part of a larger institution. And you interpret the south node in the worst possible light. There's the positive sign of Aquarius, but you always interpret it. So it's where you lose, you're a cog in the wheel. The colonies were just a cog in the empire's big wheel. And where the U.S. has to go is The opposite of Aquarius is Leo, okay? We got to shine forth as, the Leo is, I'm the individual. Look at me. I'm important to myself. I'm not part of some huge organization. I'm special. Special. I'm a leader. And it's in the 9th house. The 9th house is spirituality and religion. What this means is USA's ultimate destiny is spiritual leadership. Okay? Leo, North Node in the 9th house. And this confirms what Bob has said too. Spiritual, that's the ultimate. Spiritual, the 9th house in Leo. Okay? The dark side of that is I'm special, American exceptionalism. We can do whatever we want. We got to get over that. That's why we need our ego crushed, so we can step into the highest destiny of that North Node in Leo. Spiritual leadership for the world, 9th house. Okay? And we came out of this just being second-class citizens in the British Empire. That's the Aquarius. So that's the meaning of the nodes in U.S. chart. The way I took it. Oh, and the other thing that's happening by transit, Pluto's in Aquarius. So what's coming up for the second time is Pluto is going over our south node. And I wrote it down, 26, I think. So I look back in history, well, if that happens in an individual, it's usually a difficult time, it's a crisis. Because Pluto, the south node is past life tendencies you need to let go of, and Pluto dredges them up. And there's often a life crisis because you're running those things again, and you finally face them. And so, but when I went back and look at, okay, Pluto went over the USA South Node shortly after, and it was 1781 to 83, a few years. And that was positive. That's when we defeated the British. That's when the first Articles of Confederation were formed. So it was actually a positive experience for the U.S. So we're coming up on our second time that Pluto hits the South Node. So that, I'm not sure how to interpret it. It could be both. It could be a crisis that is also positive. Yeah. So that's happening. So major things happening. And in 2 years, the progressed sun, the U.S. is what, 249 years old, right? So if you go ahead 249 days past July 4th, you'll find the progressed sun is at 20 degrees of Virgo, okay? Which is almost, in 2 years' time, it'll be directly opposite Neptune. And that's that 2027, 28. Progress, whenever, if it's an individual, that's usually a loss of some kind, ego crunching time, you can lose your job, you feel confused about your direction in life, you don't know which way to go, you got laid off at work or something. We're coming up on that in 2 years as a nation. It could be 2 years, 27, progressed sun opposite Neptune. And it's the first time it's happened because it's 200, the sun has only moved over the course of our history from where it was and plotted there. At 240 degrees, it takes it right to here. So that's how astrologers look at key events, the transits and progressions. And it's predictable that we can say there's using the archetypes as the guideline to interpret the meaning of what's probably going to happen. You want to add anything, Bob?
No, I think you did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so come to on August 10th. It's really fascinating work. You might be a little bummed out by what I said at the transit, but you'll leave next time feeling, oh yeah, great.
What's August 10th?
August 10th, Sunday, August 10th.
What's that?
Presentation.
I'm doing the Pluto thing. That's the 3,000 year thing.
If we're in town.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, great. Thank you. Hey.
You did a good job.
Thanks for coming.
Well, I had to hear all that. Haunted Elf in there. Did you hear that, Ed? You guys spending a lot of money on some better.
That's the same weekend.
I ran into my car door.